Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mark Wallace, and Charles Thomas is here with me. We're having some little technical difficulties, but he's going to be with us audio momentarily while he works on that. But we are moving forward. Um, we want to welcome you to this Monday edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. We're here with you every Monday night, streaming live at intellectualradio.com, on Facebook, Instagram, uh, X, formerly known as Twitter, and on YouTube. And tonight we have a great program lined up for you. We're going to be having some guests that's coming on with us. Justice Cynthia Y. Cobbs, who is an Illinois Appellate Court Justice of the First District, where she has served since 2015. And as an appellate court justice, she hears appeals of final judgments in all criminal, civil cases tried in Cook County Circuit Court. Previously, Justice Cobb served as the trial court judge, presiding over trial cases including DUIs, misdemeanors, breach of contracts, subrogation, and eviction cases, and of course, civil jury trials. Before joining the bench, Justice Cobb served as the director of the Illinois courts, becoming the first Black American and the first woman to ever be appointed by the Illinois Supreme Court to serve in that capacity. As director, she advised the High Court on every aspect of supervising and administering the Illinois judicial government interface with the General Assembly on proposed legislation affecting the judiciary branch, and developed and administered the Supreme Court's annual multi-million-dollar budget. Prior to her supervising work of the office legal staff early in her career, she served as senior judicial law clerk to the Supreme Court Chief Justice, Justice Charles E. Freeman. And she's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. Charles, did you get going?
Can you hear me now, Mark?
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
You can hear me now, but we still have a little issue. But if you can hear me, we're going to have to go with that.
All right. We'll get it worked out. That's all right. So, so Justice Cobbs is supposed to be joining us, and here she is joining us now. So I'm going to be bringing her into the studio. Justice Cobb, welcome to the People's Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. I've already done your introduction. I certainly can't go through your myriad of your resume and all of your absolutely power-packed resume of service. We certainly thank you. But now let me just say on a personal note that I met Justice Cobb, and I want to say it's been almost 10 years now, Justice Cobb.
About that.
10 years when I interviewed her on another radio station that I used to be on, and I have been thoroughly privileged to know her and impressed with the body of work that she has done, and have been a great supporter of her. And another time when she was running for the Supreme Court. So, but we won't be talking about that, but we're going to be talking about where she is now and what she is doing. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. Thank you for having me. Hi, Mark. Hello, Mr. Thomas.
Hello, Justice Cobb. How are you?
I am well and happy to be joining you.
Good.
How's the campaign trail?
Whoa, well, we're in what I call the final stretch of the campaign. We have a few more weeks before we actually get to early voting, which, other than in the super sites, early voting will begin in all 50 wards and in the 30 townships on March 4th. So the election day is March 19th. So we as candidates are everywhere. I started my day this morning out at New Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church on the west side, and ended up on with some Gen Zs and millennials in the hopes of getting them interested and inspired to voting. So we're trying to hit as much of Cook County as we can to spread the word about the importance of the March primary as it relates to judges in Cook County. So it's a bit hectic, it's a bit frantic, but we're doing the job that we need to do because we're public servants and we need to bring the message to the people who vote.
Justice Cobbs, can you explain to us what an appellate court justice does and why it's important that people vote for you?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked the question because it's an important one. Because generally, when we think of courts, we often will think simply of the trial court. Makes perfect sense. That's the court that most of us will encounter in our lives. So in Illinois, not unlike most states, we have a three-tiered court system. Most every case, unless it begins in an administrative proceeding like human rights or workers' comp, most cases are begun in the trial court. You have a breach of contract, you have a criminal case, you have a marriage and dissolution case. All of those cases commence or begin in the trial court before a single judge who will hear the evidence, who will hear witnesses, who will impanel a jury, and then at the end of the case, enter a ruling or a judgment. If you lose your case in the trial court because you believe or you have reason to believe that the trial judge who entered that ruling or issued that judgment made mistakes or made errors such that the outcome of the case should have been different. And I'll pause here because there is no perfect trial. But if the trial judge in your research or review made mistakes of a magnitude such that the case should be reversed or that there should be additional proceedings in a particular case, you have the right to appeal. And I say the right to appeal because as long as you file your notice of appeal within 30 days, your appeal will be heard by a justice or three justices sitting in the Illinois Appellate Court. So notice, in the trial court, the case is decided by a single judge. On appeal, we sit in panels of three. So I would sit with two other appellate court justices. We would review the record of the proceedings that occurred in the trial court. We would review what errors you raise as the appellant that you think should have resulted in a different judgment in the trial court. And we make a decision as a panel of three justices as to whether the case was appropriately tried, in which case we affirm. If we believe there were errors of such magnitude that the trial was infirm, we can reverse. Or if we think that there was not necessarily things that would require reversal in whole, but we can remand the case to the trial court and have them do additional proceedings to reach the appropriate or the right result. So think of it this way. I say it like this a lot. In the trial court, you have a single judge who's calling the balls and the strikes. If at the end of the game, you believe he called the balls and the strikes wrong, the appellate court is the instant replay. That's where you bring your appeal.
And so the appellate court now is made, each panel is made up of three appellate court justices that hear those arguments. And is it the same panel or do they shuffle the deck, so to speak?
I like that. They shuffled the deck. So we have no authority over which cases will be assigned to a particular panel. It is random. We all are typically given the same number of cases. You know, there is some parity in the randomization of cases that are assigned to an authoring justice who will draft the judicial decision on behalf of the panel of three, but it is random. There is a system in the administrative office of the courts, and Mark, you know what that is because I was the director of that. Mm-hmm. There is a system, a computerized system in Springfield that randomizes the assignment of cases for the justices in the first district. So we don't have any say over what case we're going to write. We're going to be assigned to be a panelist on. It's random, and it is shuffled in a division and across the court, as a matter of fact.
So now, again, going back to that original question, why is it important that you sit on this court?
Well, I'll give you some of my background, which hopefully will tell you that, and then I'll tell you the makeup of our court. I have been working in the Illinois judiciary for all of my legal career. So when I graduated law school, I wasn't necessarily I wasn't interested at all in working in a law firm and in making a lot of money. I really hadn't quite decided what I would do, but I'm a clinical social worker who had done work with children and families. So I did have some thought that I would use that law degree now to connect in a different way in working in that same environment. As it turns out, I was invited to work in the Illinois Appellate Court, First District in the Research Division. 6 months later, I received a call from Justice Charles Freeman to join his staff as his judicial law clerk in the appellate court. So that's where my work with the appellate court or in the reviewing court began. But it didn't stop there. As we all know, and you know, Justice Freeman then, 6 months after I went to work for him in the appellate court, went to the Illinois Supreme Court. He was elected as the first African-American justice to serve on our Illinois Supreme Court. He invited me to join him on the Supreme Court. So not only was he the first African-American justice, I was the first African-American senior judicial law clerk on the Supreme Court. The work I did there was similar to the work that I'm doing now. As his senior judicial law clerk, I reviewed all of the cases that were assigned to him as a Supreme Court justice to do the authoring opinion. I looked at those cases. I reviewed those cases. I drafted the initial opinion in some cases, and in many of them, I assigned to what we call the junior law clerks. So I had 7 years of experience as a senior law clerk. Left Justice Freeman, went on to the administrative office of the courts, where I served as a staff attorney, chief legal counsel, and then in 2002 was appointed by that court to be the director. I am now back in the appellate court doing the very work that I started out in my legal career. I am in my race, and it is a contested race. I do have an opponent. I am the most qualified in my race to do the work that I've been doing now for 9 years. I said I would talk to you about the makeup of the appellate court. So there are 5 judicial districts. We only want to talk about District 1, which is the district in which I sit and is the district which covers all of Cook County. There are 24 justices in the First District Appellate Court. Of the 24, 7 are African American, 4 are women. I am one of 4 African American women who serve on the Illinois Appellate Court, First District. I am the best person for this job because I have the requisite qualifications and the most experience to do this work that I do. So we need the diversity and we need the experience, and I bring both those.
That says it.
Well, thank you. I said a lot, I think.
Yeah,
You did, but it's very important and very concise. But is running for retention like this a distraction from what you do in the court?
So I want to make clear, or I want to clarify a point, because it's easy to think that what I'm running for is retention. I am not. Okay. Retention races occur only once on the ballot, and that will be November. And those are judges for whom the Democratic voters will vote yes or no. I serve on the Illinois Appellate Court by assignment of the Illinois Supreme Court. So in 2015, the Supreme Court decided that I would be a great justice on the Illinois Appellate Court, and they assigned me to serve in that capacity. But that assignment will end in December of 2024. In Illinois, we elect our judges. No Supreme Court can appoint someone to work as a judge forever. So I serve by assignment, and therefore I must stand for election in the general primary in March. So it's not retention. I need a majority of the Democratic voters to vote for me to continue my service as a justice on the appellate court.
And that is all of Cook County?
All of Cook County. If you live anywhere in Cook County, you have the opportunity to vote. And Mark, I'm glad we're kind of like going down that path, because I want listeners to also understand that it is the March primary that is critical for judicial candidates. You cannot wait in Cook County until November. We do not typically have a Republican opponent on the ballot in March, but we will have Democratic opponents, as I do, in March. So if you don't vote in March, there is some opportunity that you won't have the judge who should be sitting in the seat after the March election. So it is critical to understand that it's the March primary that is important for judicial races in Cook County.
Now, normally, and it's, I think it's widely known that I've been a supporter of yours for a long time. But I think that in saying that people certainly should know, and that's why I want people to get an understanding of the body of your work, that, you're not a neophyte in what you're doing. You have been at every level of the office that you now sit in, going from this office all the way to the Supreme Court, to administering it and coming back to it. So you have a thorough view and experience of the office that you hold, which most people on the appellate court does not have that experience.
That's exactly right. I don't really want to talk about my opponent because that person is not on the appellate court. That person has never written an appellate court decision in their life. 9 years as a justice on the appellate court has yielded, I think, a great body of work. I have authored more than 500 judicial decisions in appeals in every area of the law, whether it's criminal, civil, domestic relations, juvenile delinquency, probate, every area of the court, administrative matters. Any case that is appealed, I've likely written a decision, a decision in. So my body of work speaks for itself. And I would add that in my 9 years and my more than 500 judicial opinions, I've only had one justice to dissent in one of those 500 cases, only one. And that is significant because there are some divisions and some justices in our appellate court where dissents are written frequently. But my body of work speaks for itself. My judicial opinions are well reasoned. They're well researched. They are cited by lawyers. They are relied upon by judges. So it's no small thing that I have produced a significant body of work. And I'll say this because I have to laugh at this. So I clerked for Justice Freeman on the Illinois Supreme Court. And if you understand the work of a judicial clerk, you will understand what I'm getting ready to say. The judicial law clerks assist the judge in researching and writing an analysis. And I did all of that, certainly on the Illinois Supreme Court. So I've had a hand in drafting some of the more complex cases that bear the name of Justice Charles E. Freeman as being the authoring justice. And he is the authoring justice because you couldn't file anything under his name unless it was his decision to do so. But now as an appellate court justice, I've had the opportunity to actually cite to opinions that I had a hand in writing in the Illinois Supreme Court, now as a justice on the Illinois Appellate Court. And I just am so kind of like amazed and tickled that I get to do that every now and then. I'm citing a case that I worked on in the Illinois Supreme Court, now as the authoring justice in the Illinois Appellate Court.
Can you give us an example of a case that regular voters like me might be able to relate to that you wrote an opinion on?
There is a case, and I frequently cite this. It's a case called People versus Tolliver. And I talk about it frequently because I think it plays up the importance of having good, qualified, competent judges who don't just look at the cold record and say, oh, game over, but look closely at the case and the facts to know what should or should not have occurred. The case is People versus Tolliver. And in this case, there was not a juvenile, but a youthful defendant who had committed somewhat of a minor offense, and he was given 2 years probation. And with probation, you are typically given conditions. So the conditions of this young man's probation were to complete his high school education, to not hang out with gangs, to do some community service, those kinds of things. Well, the young man came back for a status before the judge who had imposed the conditions and reported to the judge what he had in fact completed. All right, he hadn't exactly completed all of those conditions, but he had made quite a bit of headway in completing them. Fine, judge was not impressed. The young defendant goes away, comes back for another status. At this time, the judge is informed he's completed all of the conditions of probation. That should have been the end of the story. It was not. This trial judge instead added conditions which is not appropriate and it's not correct. She added conditions. She did that more than once while this young defendant was still under her authority. Came back a third and a fourth time until finally this youthful defendant did actually commit a crime, which ended up being a violation of probation. When I saw that case, I was absolutely troubled by it because this defendant probably would not have broken the law had he ended his period of time with the trial court. You cannot continue to add conditions. I wrote in that opinion, People versus Tolliver, that this trial judge essentially baited this kid until he did in fact break the law. So what I was able to do was to vacate a 10-year sentence that this judge had imposed for a violation of probation. Why? Because the kid did not violate probation. He had completed the conditions of probation as appropriate. The 10 years that were imposed for the sentence for his commission of an offense, I couldn't do anything with that, but I certainly was able to vacate the erroneously and improperly imposed 10 years for violation of probation that this defendant had completed long before he had ever committed an offense.
And shouldn't the public understand that that ruling stands and that it can be referred to later on? I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the language.
Sound like it.
Yeah. But that ruling is important because if this should happen to another young person, then they could refer to this case as a precedent.
That's absolutely correct. No, anything that is written as an opinion, and now even what we call Rule 23s, which have persuasive, not precedential, but any case that we draft and we characterize it as an opinion is binding precedent. And so there is case law that comes out of judicial decisions that our trial courts must follow. They have no discretion. If we write it, much like the Supreme Court, if you write a judicial opinion, they have to follow it in the first judicial district. They have no discretion to do anything other than that. And so that's why the appellate court work is so important. That becomes the law of the land. It gives direction to lawyers. It gives directions to trial judges who are deciding cases day to day. And you need someone who understands the law, who can apply the law, who can write clearly, who can write decisively, issue a ruling, and have these matters disposed of effectively and efficiently.
Well, and going back to your comment and talking about you only had one justice that wrote a dissent, which is important because it's essentially saying that when they write a dissent or saying that your opinion was incorrect.
Right. Disagreement.
They disagreed with that opinion, and to suggest or to state that you only had one that had out of 500. Was that the number?
Yeah, it's 500. Yeah. It's 500 plus, but I just use 500 because it's a good round.
I mean, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary, and it really speaks to the acumen of your judicial experience in the judiciary and why we need those kinds of people who are serving in that capacity. Now, court is intimidating for most people.
Oh, God, yes.
But when you start talking about the higher courts, like the appellate court, it is another layer of intimidation where people don't believe that they have the opportunity to prevail there. Mm-hmm. Now, when you are the panel of justices, do you discuss the case amongst the panelists, or do you review the cases and then you make your opinion and you cast your vote?
So there's more than one approach, and every approach is available to any authoring justice. So if I get a case as the authoring justice, I have the discretion or the privilege to talk it over with the two other justices who are going to serve on the panel, just to kind of like get a sense of what they might think about an issue, or I may draft a bench memo and share it with my colleagues to let them know this is what I think about the issues that are raised and how I think it should be resolved. So you have the opportunity to dialogue, converse with your colleagues to determine, whether you're going in the right direction, whether it's a direction that can that can obtain a majority or a unanimous opinion. So there are all kinds of options. I typically will write a bench memo and share it with my colleagues so that they know what I'm thinking. You generally will know your colleagues' judicial philosophy on things. You will know where they stand on a particular issue. They will know where I stand on a particular issue. So the options are just myriad. You can have those conversations. You can do a bench memo, or you can do neither and just file something and hope that if it's a simple case, if it's something that really the law is settled, and because we get every appeal, not every appeal raises a new issue. If it's settled, you're going to get a unanimous opinion.
Yeah, and obviously we're speaking to a general public, and a question that is always raised is that if the law is the law, and you have an appellate court panel, like you have a Supreme Court panel, why are there differences of opinions based on the same law with the same arguments? Why is there a difference?
So we always learn in law school, and Mark, I know you learned that, Charles, you're going to learn it tonight, but I'll bet you've heard it before. It is the case that reasonable minds may differ. And that's true. So you may get a piece of legislation, or you may be applying a statute. And let's say, for instance, the statute uses the word shall. Well, to most, it seems that the use of the word shall is mandatory, that you must do it a particular way. Well, under the rules of statutory construction, shall doesn't always mean shall. And so you may have a justice on the panel who says, oh no, shall means absolutely you must do it this way in this case. But you may see another justice who says, no, I don't think so, because the practical effect of doing it with a shall would mean this, that, or the other. So the reason you have panels of three is so that you can have that kind of a discourse. It's not always a bad thing to have a dissent or to have a special concurrence where there is a fleshing out of a difference of agreement. That really is how the law evolves. So if we're not all on the same page on a particular issue, there is some hope sometimes that the case will go up and the Supreme Court will break the tie or will settle the issue for us. But it isn't the case that that laws or statutes are always so clear and so clear cut that we will all disagree. It depends on how you're construing that statute. Reasonable minds may differ.
You are the Democrat Party's endorsed candidate here. You were slated by the party. Why should I care, or why should anybody care about that?
Well, because there is not simply the case where you walk into the slating room where all the Democratic committeemen sit, and they're not the only people in the room, by the way. There are other people who can be in the room when you're presenting your credentials. When you are appearing for slating, you are saying to the committee persons who have responsibility to go back out into their communities and to share with the voters who they endorse and why, you are sharing with really representatives of the county of Cook, who the individuals are who should be supported for judge. So you should care about slating because the committee persons are the individuals who did that slating, whose vote resulted in an endorsement by the Democratic Party. And it's not just that. Before you are slated, the Democratic Party also looks at what the bar associations had to say about you. And that is, as you may remember or may know, quite an extensive process. So we are evaluated for slating purposes by some 14 bar associations, including the Illinois State Bar Association, the Chicago Bar Association, the Cook County Bar Association, the Lesbian Gay Bar Association. All of the bar associations evaluate. They look at your body of work. They look at your public service. They look at and investigate people who've, represented themselves before you. That's why you should care.
So there is some value in that endorsement. So how do you draw the line, though, as a judge, to be obligated to these politicians who have given you something of value? How do you separate that? How will you Or
Yeah.
how have you separated that during your years on the bench?
I guess we, as judicial candidates, are probably the weirdest candidates anybody would ever see.
Agreed.
Because
Definitely.
we're not really politicians. We have to learn how to do political things because in Illinois, we elect our judges. But we hold the line. I mean, and committeemen understand. If they don't understand, they understand pretty quickly that there are parameters, that, you know, there are lines that can't be crossed. So yes, just like any other politician per se, we have to work with these Democratic committeemen, these representatives that the Democrats in our communities have elected to be their mouthpiece, have elected to kind of like carry the water for them. So we can't meet with what, the 5 million voters or the 5 million citizens in Cook County, 4 or 5 million people. We rely on the committeemen and the township committee persons to carry the message forward. There is no commitment to a committeeman to do anything. There is never a question as to whether you will vote a certain way, you will rule a certain way, nothing. The only commitment is that we will be fair, that we will be just, that we will rule with integrity. We will participate in the political process only to the extent that our canons permit.
And I think at the appellate court level, it's even more transparent, and there's a greater wall there because of the way that cases go to Springfield, and then they are dispersed back to the appellate court level. So nobody knows who's getting that case to review.
No, we don't know. You don't know.
Yeah,
Nobody
but in Illinois, aren't they mostly all Democrats?
In Cook County,
In
they're
Cook County,
mostly
yes.
for in the judiciary is largely Democrat.
Right, but they don't know just because they're Democrats, they don't know who on the appellate court is going to be reviewing what case. They don't know.
Aren't there cases that come up through? I can't give you any examples, unfortunately, but aren't there cases of legislative matters that find their way to the appellate court system before they might be decided by the Supreme Court even?
We construe statute all the time. That's part of what we do at the appellate court. But to construe statute doesn't mean that you are construing it in favor of any particular person. So when a statute comes in a case, say someone is challenging the manner in which a statute was applied to the facts of his or her case, we are required to construe it, to interpret the statute, to see if it was accurately applied. We don't look back at whose legislation that is. It doesn't really matter to us. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, here's a rule of statutory construction. The best way to determine the intent of the legislature is by reading the plain language of the statute. You do not go beyond the plain language of the statute unless the language is unclear, in which case you then look at the legislative debates. But even that, the debates can sometimes tell you something or tell you nothing, but there's no interference between the legislature and the members of the court with respect to deciding a case. And I'll just say one more thing. We enjoy the privilege of recusal. In the event that there is ever a case or controversy in which you believe that, not that you can't be fair, but in which you believe there might be the appearance of impropriety, you may recuse yourself.
Have you ever done that in your
Yes,
in your
absolutely.
Oh, good.
If I actually recused myself recently in a case, and I won't tell you the name of the case, but it was an election case. I am a slated Democratic candidate. I would not participate in that case. I recuse myself.
Good for you. I mean, that's good.
It's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Justice Cynthia Cobbs, my friend,
yes.
And certainly the best person for that seat. I am glad that you came here to be with us tonight. Charles, do you have any other questions for Justice Cynthia?
Good, man. I remember the campaign for the Supreme Court seat, right? And you ran for that.
I did.
And you know, you were the most impressive of those candidates who ran, and I know all of them. And you were absolutely the one who was most impressive. And I remember you on the campaign trail. You would show up by yourself this little woman and take the room. It was so impressive. I mean, as a reporter, then I couldn't say, "Hey, you got it going on," but I can say it now, and
Yeah.
the best to you. I hope
Thank you,
that
Charles.
you're
Thank
able
you.
to wrap this up.
Well, you're
All
going to
right.
help me wrap it up because you're going to spread
In
the
March.
word.
Well, I'm spreading the word now, but I do know that you are an extraordinary person, and certainly someone who people should really take a good close look at voting for.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to say they should not only take a good look, but they should vote for you. This is a
He's a
person
politician,
who I'm not a politician.
I'm an old, I'm an old, I'm an old journalist,
I'm a down to the bone, call it like I see it.
like you see it, my brother. I like that.
This is how I've come to know Justice Cynthia Cobbs since I met her, to be a person of great integrity, of great brilliance, and certainly deserves to be there, and we need her there. And I would ask anybody who trusts my voice to cast a ballot for her on March 19th. Now, I know that there was a pause in the early voting. Have they corrected that because there are a person
I
on
believe
the
they did.
judiciary
I
that
believe
they
they
had to
did pause
remove?
it. The last thing I read was that it was going to be resumed on Monday. But I would tell anybody that if you have any question about whether it's resumed, to really just go to the clerk's website and pull it up, and it'll tell you when and whether it's been resumed at those couple of super sites that opened early.
And where are you on the ballot? The judges are always at the end of the
We're
ballot.
always
Where are
at
you?
the end, although they're going to see us before they ever see the president of the United States. We're going to rule on their kids' stuff, their grandkids' stuff, but they're still waiting for the president. I am punch number 132.
132.
132.
Justice Cynthia Cobbs. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank
And
you.
you're going to be at my church
I am
on this Sunday, right?
Yes, I'm looking
This
forward to
Sunday.
coming back to worshiping and fellowshipping. That's part of the campaigning. Some people go just to campaign. I go to get spiritually filled and campaign, but I think you can do both.
Yeah. All right. That's she's going to be at Lagos Baptist Assembly this Sunday. Make sure that you all are there at 10 o'clock, 10833 South Halsted. You'll get a chance to see her. Is there any place else that you're going to be between now and then that people can come out to see you?
We are on Monday. I think on Sunday, in addition to being at Lagos, I'm looking forward to that. I'm also going to be in Proviso Township. They're having a town hall meeting there with all the judicial candidates. You can check that if you go to Proviso Dems organization, that's there. And then there is also the Evanston Democratic Organization is hosting a candidates forum on Sunday as well. So I'll be busy on Sunday, first at Lagos, but then in Proviso and also then in Evanston.
All right. Very good. All right. Justice Cynthia Cobbs, thank you so much for stopping by. And I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you so very much. You guys have a good evening.
All right. Take care. All right. All right, that's Justice Cynthia Cobbs. I tell you, I Charles, there are very few people, and I guess I speak kind of reservedly when I talk about the judiciary, but there are very few people in politics that I have a high regard for, and I mean I have a super high regard for her ever since I met her. When I met her the first time, and it was Judge Leonard Murray, who married my wife and I, that introduced me to her when she was running for the Supreme Court. And then when I started looking through her record and I started looking through her history and listening to her, and then listening to the other candidates, I think that we missed it on that one. We missed it.
I mean, the party did not endorse her for the Supreme Court. And if you were in the sessions in which they were interviewing these candidates, you wonder why? Why not? I mean, she had all of the experience, and particularly her experience with Justice Freeman. And politics is weird, particularly in Cook County. And but it's good to see that she's they came to their senses and they've endorsed her for this time around.
Yeah, and she's the first time in the history of the Supreme Court of a retiring justice that they did not honor that outgoing justice's recommendation, and she was Justice Freeman's recommendations, and she
Right.
decided to go a different way. So,
Mhm.
but I'm glad she is where she is, and I think that the state, for that matter, certainly is that much better off by having her as a part of the judiciary. All right, so look, we got another guest coming up at 8:00, but between now and then, we're going to be talking about reparations at 8:00 with Kamm Howard and Vetress Boyce. Both of them are with a reparations committee. They have a big event coming up on the 24th, so we're going to be talking with them in the 8:00 hour. So let's talk about some of the news of the past week.
Now, could you explain? Let me interrupt you. I wanted you to because this is about this past week. Can someone size up this whole shot spotter business? I know you mentioned it, and I know you're into these things they put on poles and such around the city. But what is the deep controversy about this shot spotter thing? Because somebody fires a gun and it's shot spotted. I mean, then the cops show up, but it's not like you're
supposed to show up.
Are supposed to show up or whatever. But it's not like it's after the fact, isn't it? After a shot is fired, then the cops come. It's not.
Well,
it's not.
Yes, that's true. What happens is a gun is fired, then it's detected by the shot spotter, and then it's reviewed, and then it's dispatched to a police that's supposed to respond to that location where it was the gunshot was detected. Now they have these cameras that are on these poles, and there are these people in the districts that's supposed to be monitoring these cameras, and supposedly that they can pick up images of where the shot was detected, of people who are either coming from the area where it is, and supposedly they can take those and superimpose and do investigations and all that sort of thing. But on the side of those who are against it, are saying that it's over policing, it's over surveilling to no outcomes, that we're spending $49 million on something that has delivered no positive resolutions to shootings. I read an article, and I was trying to get that reporter on, and I probably should have tried to get him on, and maybe we will get him on, because he did an exhaustive reporting in the Reader that I picked up when I went to see the movie during the Super Bowl. And I picked up, and he did an article, and it showed the statistics of the accuracy of this, and it's pretty dismal. It's pretty dismal in terms of the data. Now, the flip side of that is I had a conversation with a retired police sergeant who said that, you can't just look at the numbers. It's a tool that helps us to investigate the crime or to crimes. And I said to him, well, and then he started talking about what they do and they don't do, and some police officers follow it up and others don't. And I said to him, that's much of the problem, is that we have the system that we're paying for, that the average person doesn't see what the benefit of it, that it's not leading to any resolutions or clearances of any cases. And there in this article, it showed the percentages of how just off this system is. Like, for instance, in October of 2007 to December of 2017, only 20% of shots detected, only 20% of them were detected. 20% of 45 were detected by the shot spotter. So that's 9 out of 45. In 2017 and in 2018, it was 60%. In 2019, it was 90%. Then it went back down to 60%. So, I mean, the numbers are all over the place. But I asked the question, as a person who was not for spending money and we're not getting any outcomes on something, is okay, can anybody give us any data or any reports that these led to solving crimes? Nobody can really appoint that, but there are
Well,
others who say that it's a good tool.
but you can also say the same thing about all of these cameras that they have in the street. They only use those on extraordinary cases, it seems, and they're not really the investigative tool that I would think they were. But I think that more importantly in the shot spotter business is that both newspapers in Chicago have taken off on the mayor, and a lot of other critics are popping up using this as a way to get at what they allege is Brandon Johnson's chaotic, mismanaged administration, particularly in how he promised to get rid of the shot spotter system during the campaign, and the contract just expired, and now he wants to extend the contract beyond the Democrat convention this summer. Well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right, Mayor? And a lot of people are asking the questions like, what is going on? Who is advising him to make these kinds of decisions and half decisions and amended decisions during his administration? This has been a critical moment, a watershed moment, I believe, in his administration, when the local media, at least the editorial boards at the Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune, are sort of publicly turning against Brandon Johnson, precipitated by this shot spotter controversy, which I don't know if it's as big a controversy about the technology as it is about his management of the city so far. What say?
Well, I guess that could be. I'm sure there's some contributory to that, as to be able to use that on, depending on what side that they want to use that argument on. But speaking about making these decisions, I think that when you've made promises, when you've made commitments, I would think that you would have had a great deal of information that's provided to you to make that commitment. And then when it came time to make the decision, then you can make the decision. But I think what's happening now is, what he is responding to is that you're now having a lot of voices that are saying, no, don't do this. Because if you do this, this is a gift to the people on who want to do wrong, or the criminals. And there are others on the other side said the criminals are getting away with it anyway, because you haven't made it hasn't made any headway in the crime. In fact, there was an example that showed in one district, which is the 10th district, where these two rival gangs are in the district, and there were shots between the two rival gangs on several occasions that the shot spotter never picked up. So, and that was pointed out on instance after instance after instance about how this system just does not work, and a private company is being enriched, but the public is not getting any benefit from it. But to your question, and to which I think is a fair question, when you make a decision, you have to make that decision and you have to stick to it. But you also need to make sure that you've got the information in order to make that decision. But I think, if the shot spotter was bringing some revenue in, we wouldn't be having this
We would not be
conversation.
having this conversation.
Okay,
But
we would
I
not
think,
be having this
yeah,
conversation. But I'll tell you what I would do.
the big question is, why continue the contract if the thing doesn't work?
It doesn't work.
Are they going to help why are the Democrats so special that you want to leave it up for them when in fact, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Save $5-10 million, whatever it is, and put that back in the city coffers, which can be used any number of other places, as opposed to continuing something that you say doesn't work. It's
exactly.
ludicrous.
And look,
It's ludicrous.
last week, I alluded to this. It's not, I think it's $9 million a year or something like that. Take the $9 million a year and use it to pay whistleblowers. You could solve 600 murders if you paid $15,000 each.
Hey,
You could solve
but
600
that's
murders.
snitching. That's snitching, and they
That's-
don't say
look,
that in Chicago.
Well, snitching they don't play anywhere according to that.
Yeah.
But snitching is really amongst those people who are doing the same thing, they say, and then telling on somebody else. But beyond that, I would say that would be a good test. Take that $9 million, keep it in the area of policing, but use it, do a test on paying out $15,000 rewards to solving homicide. Let's see where that leads us over the next year, 2 years. But I would say do away with the system. You made the commitment to do away with it. The evidence is in, apparently, because I've asked the question even to the police officer or the retired police officer who just vehemently disagreed with me over the weekend, that they think it's an effective tool. I don't know any other police officers who have said that, because I wanted to speak to some commanders and get their thoughts on it. And I will. But I think that the system needs to go, because there's not a single resolution to a crime, even though people say that there are. Where are they? That's what I say. Show me the evidence.
Well, the police response time and all that, I guess the police want to be sure that they get to scenes as soon as they can. At least they claim to want to do that, and they made the example of. I think it was a critic that made the example of the 13-year-old who was shot up on the north side by the police officer who was responding to shots fired that apparently had been picked up by a shot spotter. That's when the 13 was with the older kid, and they were out with a gun, and the cop showed up, and he ended up shooting the 13-year-old just as he was dropping. You remember that story? Adam Toledo.
Yes.
Toledo. AKA Little Homicide. That's what they called him on the street. And he got killed. And the shot spotter apparently initiated that police response to that incident that led to that incident. And some critics are actually saying, well, if it hadn't been a shot spotter, they wouldn't have gone there and the kid would be alive. What? I mean, that was my reaction to that. And but that's an example of what they're saying. Why they're saying, some people are saying there should be, that we need a shot spotter. And
well, I don't know what the statistics are of how many municipalities actually have shot spotters out of the 19,400 municipalities in the country. I don't know how many have shot spotters, and we should probably find out what that is. But I still contend, here we are, at the bottom of the heap when it comes to clearing homicides, at 14, 15, or 16%, whatever that number is, when the national average is 60% or above. Why are we at the bottom of the heap? Now, people, they say all kinds of things about snitching and all. The snitching rule is the same anywhere.
It's city council everywhere.
Yeah, Chicago is no special place. The snitching rule is anywhere. I mean, you saw in city council how when one of their own got caught, and there was a person who was cooperating with the government. They had more problems with the person that was cooperating with the government than the person who was the
And the
crook.
cook, right?
So so but anyway,
Chicago.
so it's the same anywhere. But at any rate, I think that if you're not getting any results, then why continue it? You only continue it when you're getting money in, like red light cameras and speed cameras. Even though you're not getting any real results, you're getting a ton of money, so you're not going to do away with that. As every person who has run for a public office over the last 3 cycles or so have said, and is just really, they're just sort of, what do they call that? Waving the carrot. But with the shot spotter, I think that people look at the idea now that, well, wait a minute, we're going to lose these cameras on the pole. It's not working. It's not working. So why do we need to keep spending that $9 million?
Well, it's not working, and I guess it's going to be gone in September, but the mayor has taken a hit on this, and he's going to have to get his inner circle in line and get some more logical, reasoned approach to government. He's doing things and then having to undo things, such as the migrant camp and such. It's just that he's got to get he's got to take the reins at some point and make the horse go where he wants it to go, because right now it isn't happening, and I can sense it getting much worse as we continue. He hasn't been in office a year yet, and we're getting these kinds of editorial indictments, if you will, about his leadership.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, when you're in leadership, you have to make decisions, and you have to make tough decisions, and you have to make sure that the people who are around you are working your agenda as you want it to go. I think that it's probably, he's going to have to review his advisory circle around him. He's going to have to review to see whether or not he has to disband and bring in a new circle of advisors, because your advisors are critical to the success of your administration. You can't do this alone in a silo, and it just speaks to maybe the people that he is trusting in his circle, that he may have to take a serious look if this doesn't turn around.
And the governor isn't helping him. The governor is not helping. He sort of sits on the sidelines and makes takes cheap shots at whatever the mayor does, and it doesn't help. It's like they're in a contest. Well, who's in charge? Because it's always been, is it the governor? Is it the mayor of the city of Chicago? That's been the story in Illinois since Richard J. Daley, because the mayor can be the power in Illinois and the governor is secondary. Well, this governor is not accepting a secondary role. He is, again, he takes cheap shots every now and then on what the mayor is doing, and it doesn't help. It doesn't help, and we'll see. It's just a political dynamic that's happening right now in Chicago. Anything else new?
Yeah, there's a lot new, but we can't talk about it right now. We're going to talk about it after we talk with our new guests that are coming up. I see one of them is in the waiting room. Vetress Boyce is in the waiting in the green room, and we're waiting for Kamm Howard to join us, and then we will do that. There's several other things that I want to go into, but I think we should wait to go into them because they do require more time, and we'll do that. But coming up, we want to talk about reparations. It is a big conversation, and our next two guests Kamm Howard, who is the he is with Direction Reparations United, and Vetress M. Boyce, who is an entrepreneur and vice president of Conrad Worrill Community Reparations Commission, is here with us tonight, and they are going to talk with us about reparations. And I want to welcome both Ms. Vetress Boyce and Kamm Howard. Welcome to the program.
Good evening.
Hello. Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
That's good to see you all. Okay, you are Vetress. You're with the Conrad Worrill Community Reparations Commission, and Kamm, it's good to see you as well in your direction of Reparations United. This is a controversial conversation, depending upon what side you fall on, and so we invited you all to come. I know that you all have a big event coming up on the 24th, and you'll tell us more about that. But why don't you, starting with you, Vetress, give us some background on what it is that you all like to talk about and share with us.
Well, we just want to bring to the forefront of all the residents in the city of Chicago, mostly, preferably, Black residents, on the progress that has been made thus far with reparations, where we are compared to where we started back in 2018 and where we are in 2024. We feel that it's time to get more momentum behind reparations, get more organizations involved, and making sure that as it relates to future elections, that we are really asking politicians the number one question that can make a difference in the lives of Blacks in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois and this entire country. Primarily Blacks. I mean, we're the most loyal base of supporters for the Democrat Party, but yet year after year, election after election, we're on the lowest end of the totem pole when it comes to resources and finances, community development, education, you name it. We're at the bottom, but we're voting for a party that has a whole say-so in our livelihood. And it's time that they correct the wrong that has existed for so long, and they do right by their most loyal base of supporters. So we're here today. We continue to push the reparations agenda. We want all inclusiveness, and it's time for the city to stand up and let your voices be heard.
Kamm?
Yeah, I echo that. I also want to just share with the listeners where we are in the reparations push here in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. Although we started very early in the process with municipalities gaining reparations structures, task force commissions, et cetera, we have been far behind in any type of action toward actually delivering repair to the Black citizens of Chicago. Same way with the state of Illinois. We've had an Illinois commission for quite some time, and it has not lived up to what it was mandated to do. And so we want to talk about where we are in the city of Chicago, where we are in the state of Illinois, and also where we are with the federal push for reparations.
Can I interject here briefly? Wasn't there like $500,000 in the mayor's budget for this fiscal year that was set aside to set up some kind of study or the early stages of a study of some sort about reparations in the city of Chicago?
Well, the $500,000 appropriation is not for study. I mean, there has been enough studying, right?
No kidding.
On a federal level, local level, it's time to write the plan, and it's time to put some action in place. So that $500,000 was appropriated to the contract compliance committee that is headed by Emma Mitz to actually write the plan, not only for the reparations commission for the city of Chicago, but also to begin the process of writing the plan for the office for the Black descendants of the enslaved.
So somebody's working on that right now. There's somebody actually every day at a keyboard writing this plan. I mean, what's up?
No, that is not the case. So we went down to City Hall Friday, to get an update as far as where they are in the process. And they have not moved a dial. We were giving reasons that relate to different offices and different sectors of the city. Different departments were being restructured, and they were considering a chair and a co-chair, but nothing has been finalized. And so I was informed that at least by mid-March that we will see a lot more action and that we will see some things happening.
Well, between the two commissions, between Kamm and Conrad, do you all have any recommendations? I mean, do you all have, at least a basis of a plan that you all are recommending as to what that should look like?
So
because
yes.
if you're expecting for any governmental body, if you're expecting for them to write a plan with a vision, that usually doesn't work out real well.
You're absolutely right. And so this just talked about 2018, but actually in 2019, we began the process with Dr. Willie Wilson as he was running for mayor to push the issue of reparations in the city of Chicago. Dr. Wilson enlisted Rod Sawyer on the city level and State Rep Will Davis and State Senator Manny Hunter on the state level to put forth a reparations commission legislation. I had the opportunity to work with Commissioner Boyce, Dr. Conrad, Worrill, and Rod Sawyer in actually crafting that legislation. And what I wanted to do was to take advantage of the fact that Illinois has had a reparations study commission way back in 2007 and 2008 and produced 2 volumes of work. And so beginning from that history, I crafted 16 initiatives that the city was supposed to engage in around the 5 areas of full reparations, which is cessation and guarantees of non-repetition. We had 4 areas of things we wanted to look at that needed to stop within the city of Chicago in regards to disproportionately negatively affecting Black people. Then in the area of restitution, there was three proposals submitted. The area of compensation, there's 3 proposals submitted. Satisfaction, 3 proposals submitted, and in rehabilitation, also 3 proposals submitted. They initially adopted all 16 of those measures, and then the mayor at the time removed that and put a subcommittee in its place. In Illinois, instead of adopting all 16, they adopted 4 of the 16. So Illinois legislation is farther along than the city. And those 4 that the state adopted was the preservation of Black neighborhoods. What is necessary to preserve our neighborhoods that are being gentrified, that have been historically disinvested in? How do we rebuild Black communities? That's one of the charges, mandates of the Illinois Commission. Another one was to look at how there should be proportional contracting among Blacks with state contracts. Black Technical Assistance Center was something that was proposed for the state for Blacks in the state. A third area was, how do we get vocational classes back in the classrooms? We know that a lot of our children are not going to go to a 2-year college institution after graduation or a 4-year institution, and that many of them are dropping out because there's nothing that they see within the schools that are preparing them for a life outside of school, economic life outside of school. And so we know that vocational training is a path toward successful employment and for taking care of your family. So the Illinois Commission is mandated to find out ways to research and ways to find out how to put vocational classes back into school systems, particularly in Black communities. And the 4th area that the state, out of the 16 that they adopted, was the creation of a new slavery disclosure method that requires corporations and institutions that had a complicit impact in the enslavement and the atrocities and the harms committed against our ancestors, find some way to actually contribute to a fund that begins to redress and to fund some of the redress initiatives that we're looking at putting forth. So those are the actual 4 that the state has adopted. We're hoping that the city can adopt others. In the city, we also gave the mayor what we call a reparative basic income program, which gives young people a $800 to $900 monthly income while they're engaged in reparative programs like parenting classes, trauma classes, GED classes, vocational training classes, associate degree classes, financial literacy. While they're engaged in all of these, as long as they're engaged in all of these preparatory programs, they'll get this stipend so that it'll help them move from out of the informal economy to the formal economy. So there are some initiatives, some actual programs that have been put forward, but none have been financed and none have been actually codified into policy as of yet.
Well, Kamm, you must be outraged when you hear about hundreds of millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, being spent on migrants.
Yeah.
Most definitely. We've been fighting for 10, 15, 20 million dollars for a number of years, and to see all this money being channeled toward people who have not been harmed by this nation. Let me just put it that way. They have not been harmed by this nation and by this city as we have been harmed, even by this city over the hundreds of years of 150 plus years of Chicago's existence. There's been multiple periods of harm targeted toward Black people in the city, multiple periods of plunder even among Black citizens. So yeah, we're definitely outraged about it, and it will continue as long as the people fail to rise up, and Black leadership fail to make it an issue in any budget going forward. There should be no budgets, just like the Republicans upheld the federal budget until they got what they wanted. Black aldermen, Black leadership should uphold the city budget. There should be no city budget until we get what we need in the city, particularly to address the historical harms by the city on the Black population.
And so some of the legislation that Kamm speaks about that the state has adopted, there was a resolution that passed back in 2020, 47-2 in the city of Chicago, which was a reparations resolution that took us almost 2.5 years to even get voted on the floor. So as you speak about our elected officials not having the political will to take this thing by the neck and push it through council, similar to what Robin Ruth Simmons did in Evanston, that is absolutely true. So in understanding that, the resolution was written for them, and they voted on it 47-2, but under the Lori Lightfoot administration, it sat there. Nothing happened with it. No matter how we called and tried to get information on it, nothing happened. And with the current budget, we actually put together the complete model structure. We actually pinpointed where the funding can come from, which was part of the COVID relief money that they're now using on migrants, the ARPA dollars, which they are now using on migrants. So we identified resources where funding was just sitting unappropriated and unused in the budget to go towards Black residents of this city that are paying taxes. So prior to all of this, we met with Mayor Brandon Johnson during the runoff to get his commitment to honor at least 4 line items that Kamm spoke about, which was the repair to basic income. A portion of that will go to our youth to help subsidize their income, but we've also expanded that pretty widely to say that also falls under getting African Americans, Blacks, contracts, and jobs in the city of Chicago. One specifically that we know has a 50-year lifespan, which is the lead pipe replacement program, which $1 million are coming down the pipeline. We don't have any Black contractors that has been assigned to that actual lead pipe replacement program project. And we know that within itself can help bridge the wealth gap that we have been experiencing for years. So Brandon committed, to the 4 initiatives that we asked for, which was the commission. We asked for the Office for the Black Descendants of Slave. We asked for the slavery disclosure to be brought back to the forefront. It was, enforced or written by prior Alderman Dorothy Tillman, but nothing has been done with it. and also the repair to basic income. So he agreed to a 100-day robust plan to implement that. And here we are, almost a year past the election, and we're still fighting for it. And just know this, we will not stop. So by them voting on it, the $500,000, that was a step. That was a step. But we did put an entire budget together on how these two offices would operate. Stephanie Coleman, during the final day of the budget hearing, actually held the budget up in her hand and said that City Council had 12 months to make it actually active.
So what was this that Gilbert Villegas was talking about with reparations, some $500 stipend or something like that? Where did that go?
So I actually didn't hear that conversation, but initially, Mayor Lightfoot had a resilience program that $500 went toward people who were selected out of a lottery for basic income. We had tried to get that program amended 3 years ago to include, or at the start of it, and then afterwards to include a reparative portion of that for young Black people, young Black adults in the city, because we know a lot of the crime that happens in the city is done by young people who are unemployed, who are forced in the informal economy and probably will never get out of the informal economy due to their education and criminal backgrounds. But certainly we know that all of them do not desire to stay there, but they have no path, path to actually exit that particular lifestyle in a way that will bring them to a form of resources to take care of a family. So I guess when he was talking about the $500, the mayor changed that resilience program from what it was to actually targeting toward 4 what he called high crime areas in the city of Chicago. So it's not a blanket basic income program, but it's a reparative basic income as a deterrent from some of the violence and crime that we see in the community. And it's supposed to be for $800 to $900. And the way we got that $800 to $900 was that there's a national study that showed the average street level drug dealer only makes $800 to $900 a month, not a week, but a month. And if we can get them into a program or a process that again begins to reskill them, intentionally reskill them to move them from the informal economy to the informal economy to the formal economy, we think we can cut down on crime. And in the process, Black men employed take care of Black children. Black men employed marry Black women. We have tons of data to show that. And so the more Black men we can get employed, the more we can build Black family, the more we can build Black community. So it has a short-term goal as well as a long-term goal.
But I tell you what, Kamm, man, even going back to John Conyers' bill, what was that, 40 years ago, or something like that, to what's happened here on the state level, it to me, this is a huge hoodwink, a bamboozle. The Democrat Party rolls out their sympathy for reparations to get Black people involved with them, because the Republicans will say, oh, hell no, we're not going to do any reparations. No, we already did it, whatever. But the Democrat Party rolls it out and gets Black people excited so that they can stand on a podium somewhere and say, I, Joe Blow, the Democrat, I support reparations. All of them do it. And they're not going to do anything. They haven't done anything, but they continue to trigger us to go vote for them because they have created an issue around reparations. And this whole migrant thing has exposed them. It has exposed them. Yeah, you got some money squirreled away. You could have done this a long time ago. And we continue to allow them to bamboozle us, to hoodwink us with this. And quite frankly, we got to stop. We got to stop falling for the okie doke. We do. We really do. $500,000, really? That's
Yeah,
all you
I
do in
mean,
your budget? Come
yeah,
on.
you're talking about a city that has a budget of, $20 billion, a state that has a budget of $48 billion, and another $39 billion that's coming to the state. And we're talking about $500,000. I mean, it's it's an insult to even be
It's a
talking about
token. It's a token.
$500,000. It's not even a token. I couldn't consider it to be a slap in the face. But look, you all know where I know and believe that we have to be to make any of these measures go forth. Here we are with 18 to 25-year-olds at 47% unemployment to their male white counterparts at 7% in the city of Chicago in 2024. And that is just unacceptable. But here we have 40% of our city council Black, 30% of our General Assembly Black. And we are literally begging them to do something, which is never going to happen. It is never going to happen. And as long as we maintain ourselves to be fractionized and going in all of these different directions, we will be having this conversation, to our graves. Until we change our behavior, they're not going to change their behavior. And I think that all of these measures, because, reparations has happened, there are many instances that reparations that happened on the international scene as well as in this country. I mean, when Germany has paid over $89 billion over the years to Israel for for the Holocaust, and they've paid reparations out to the Indians, and they've certainly after World War II so there's been all kinds of examples of real reparations, just not when it comes to Black folks here in this country, and then in our municipalities, and here in Chicago, where we have this vast sea of us that can turn all of this upside down for whatever the reason is. We continue to keep ourselves fractionized. You know where I am on it. And until we organize ourselves, we're going to still be making these, I don't even call it incremental. We have just plumes of opportunity that exists that in our communities, this disinvestment in our communities, we have the largest mass of land in the Black community in the city of Chicago that is shovel ready, that is sitting dormant on the southeast side of Chicago, that this mayor, his predecessor, and the previous mayor have had plans for it with no support. And the Black aldermen, the Black state reps, the Black state senators, all of them are clueless to this, We have got to get our act together. We cannot continue to operate the same way and expect that we're going to have these huge points of progress, even from our Black representatives. I don't call them leaders. They're just people who are representing somebody else's agenda. They're not representing our agenda.
That's true.
We have to lead this charge, and we have got to organize ourselves so that we choose the people who will be there. And if they don't, then we have to be able to show them that we are going to have them to pay the consequences. We cannot accept lip service like not another day. That's where we have to be.
Go ahead, Kamm.
Let me just speak to both of your points. The Illinois Commission has what I talked about, the mandate of coming up with strategies to preserve Black communities. You talked about all of that land that's not, Mark, you talked about all that land that was not being utilized in our communities. Well, the mandate of the commission is to find out how to preserve, how to develop that land. Also, with the slavery disclosure and redress, we can get money from some of these corporations to begin to have some seed money for the development and get these banks to commit to reinvesting in Black ownership of some of those parcels of land. So we have the policy potential to begin to craft the type of things that we need, but it has to come from the people. As you say, we have to organize, but we're fighting to have policy be ready for us once we organize to begin to redress the harms that are in our community. Now, on a federal level, we are in a momentous time in the history of Black voting in this country. Unintentionally, over the last 70 years, by voting overwhelmingly Democrat, we have amassed power within the Democratic Party. Whether we utilize it or whether we know it or whether we leverage it or not, that's another thing. But the fact is, we have it. We're 20% of the Democratic Party's base. 61% are white voters, 20% is Black, 19% is all other people of color. We should be getting something from that. And the reason we're not getting anything from it because a lot of us don't know we have that power, and our misleadership are not telling us how to utilize that power. But we're in an election year, and we contracted with this high-powered artificial intelligence company-driven company, survey and marketing company, that identified 2.9 million Black voters who voted Democratic Party last election are not filling Joe Biden this election, meaning that they're either going to vote Republican, they're going to vote third party, they're going to sit out. If that remains, he loses. We're in a position to actually make a demand before the election and get it heard and get it delivered to us. And that demand we're making, we started the Earn the Black Vote campaign. We're saying that this guy has to deliver that reparations commission that's been sitting on the Congress desk for 35 years. He can sign it into law tomorrow by executive order. And
But Kamm,
he has to do that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
didn't we do that with Barack?
No, we didn't do that with
No.
Barack.
We
No.
didn't?
We didn't
Really?
do that with Barack.
Really?
We demanded nothing. Black
Missed
voters
opportunity.
demanded nothing from Barack Obama.
This was never done. And it was the first time it was ever done in the city of Chicago with the mayor. All the elections that we've celebrated, mayor after mayor after mayor in the city of Chicago, nothing was ever on the table for Black people. There was not a Black agenda. There was not a commitment to how you would support Black communities, Black children, women, the entire wealth gap that we're experiencing. None of that was on the table ever. And I personally, during the Biden's election, would constantly call their headquarters, the office, to ask them about reparations. And when they interviewed Kamala Harris, there are videos on social media where she says that she would be the vice president for all of the United States of America. And no, she did not think or believe that a reparations agenda should be on the table. It was clear. But yet Blacks celebrated that election as if we won.
Right. You know, that's a very interesting question that I have regarding the general reparations movement and what's happening in the United States demographically right now. They're saying that in 15 to 20 years, this nation will be majority people of color, as they call them. And is there any effort to put together a coalition with people of color to support the reparation movement for the descendants of slaves here in the United States? Because we heard Nikki Haley say she didn't think there was any racism in America just a couple of weeks ago. And we heard this other guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, say his first thing out of his mouth when he was running for president is that he wanted to get rid of affirmative action, right? I mean, the immigrant community does not appear at this point to be supportive of reparations for those of us who have been, our families have been here for hundreds of years.
You're absolutely right, and that's why this time is so crucial. We have from now until November to make this demand, and it has to be done actually before November, so that once if he establishes this commission, we can actually get Black people to come out and vote for him. But as of right now, the way the numbers are, he loses if the vote was held tomorrow, because that 20% of Black voters are not voting. They've already made the decision. 20%.
Have any of the four...
And we have to take that same position with the state of Illinois. I mean, Crane reported that Blacks rule elections in Cook County.
Absolutely.
In the state of Illinois. So our governor needs to be put you know, he needs to be put front and center as it relates to reparations, right? And so I just want to share this. I ran for alderman just last year for the 24th ward, which was my 3rd time. So I had to have several interviews. And I did sit down with Republican candidates. And it wasn't that they were totally against reparations, but they were against calling it reparations. You know, so you run across these people that say, why do we have to call it reparations? Well, why do we have to call it anything else other than reparations? Let's call this thing what it is. And then you have people right now in the city of Chicago that's actually trying to organize people to flip the state red without having anything on the table as it relates to Black people. You know, right now it's not about a party, you know, pro-Democrat, pro-Republican, it's pro-Black right now. Who has the plan that's going to move the dial for Black people economically in the state of Illinois and this entire country?
But who among the 4 Congress members that we have elected from the Chicagoland region, the 4 Black Congress members, are any of them walking point on this in terms of getting the attention of the administration to let Joe Biden know that, no, we're not going to vote for you if you don't do what we need? When are we going to have a congressperson stand up to the White House and say that in a way that's said with authority of Black people? I haven't seen that person. They're all lackeys for the administration.
We're not going to have that until we are in a position of threat. Until we're in a position of threat to anybody who is in representative office of our communities at the local level, at the county level, at the state level, at the congressional level. We are not going to have that kind of person stepping out there because we're not forcing them to do it.
That's right.
And all politics on the federal level starts locally. And until we do what we need to do by putting the resources together that we have in places like Chicago, places like Detroit, places like Philadelphia, where we have large concentrations of Black people that can bring ourselves together and put ourselves in a form of a union, that we can be a threat to any office, whether it be the mayor, whether it be an alderman, whether it be a Cook County board, whether it be at the General Assembly. That is what we have to do. When we do that, we then have power. We don't have power. I know that people like to say we have power. We have access to the power, but we have never organized ourselves so that we can assert power. Until we do that, we are going to continue, which is important for us to do. The work that you're doing, Kamm, the work that you're doing, Vetress, the work that we're doing, it is important work. But the work that we're doing, it is like all of us going outside, putting a chain on a big boulder and trying to pull it by ourselves, rather than pulling a bunch of other people with us, and it'll make it easier for us to get the boulder down the street. That is what we have to do. And until we commit to ourselves that we have to do this and become that threat, and when we do put those numbers together, the phone will be ringing to you, to Vetress, and to whatever other agenda that is needed for Black people. Those people, Black people who are in public office, will be calling you. You will not have to be calling them. We're doing this thing backwards.
You're absolutely right about the threat. And that's why I'm here to say we've already made the threat. It's not like we have to make the threat anymore. We've made the threat. When you can identify 2.9 million Black people who say we're not voting in November, the threat has already been made. Now we have to exercise that power. They know that they cannot get those. We're telling them. We're telling the president. We're messaging the president. Starting yesterday, we have a 30-day campaign messaging 2,300 of Joe Biden's influencers with this message that they have a duty to tell him he's not going to win unless he gets that 2.9 million Black voters who defected from the Democratic Party, unless he gets them back. And the only way he can get them back is a reparations commission. They have already made the threat on our behalf. That's the power that we possess. he cannot win unless he get that 2.9 million back. Those brothers and sisters, those young people who said, I'm not voting for you, Joe. You got to earn my vote. You ain't did nothing for me. I ain't seen what you did for me in 4 years, 3 years, 8 years, 20 years of the Democratic Party. I'm not voting for you. They've already made the threat for us. Now we have to move on it. Now we have to make sure that he knows that and then tell him the only thing that he can do, and that's what we're messaging him, the only thing that he can do to reverse that defection. That's been a major defection of Black folks from the Democratic Party. The threat has already been made. The only thing he can do to reverse that is to engage in a reparative initiative now. And that's up to us to make that, to make him know that.
Kamm, you're getting me excited, man. A question.
I'm excited. I've been excited about this for 20 years.
We go through this every week. But look, what is the movement here? This question is for you as well, Vetress. What is the movement here going to do this summer? Because I'm telling you, you're going to have them all in town, including the old man, and you can make the case.
Now, see, that's very important here, right here, locally. If we can, once, I'm not going to say if, because, you know, I heard you say, Charles, that this will never happen. I can't tell you how many times we've heard that before. And if we believed it would never happen, we would have given up. But we refuse to give up, right? This thing has been being pushed on a federal level for decades, okay? And so now we decided, let's try local. And maybe locally we'll get the impact federally. So Evanston is proof that we can be effective locally. So what's happening here right now? We have elections that are coming up. We have the congressional race, as you spoke about. We have all of our state reps and our senators and our committee men, commissioners, county commissioners. And so it's time to get in their face. And we need to ask them the question locally. Because if they take it back to their federal levels, that locally Chicago is not playing. They want reparations.
You'll have an opportunity this summer.
Collectively,
you'll have an opportunity
Mark
this summer.
10 by 10, combining, you know, building this whole union of people so that we can stand firm locally, which will impact the federal level. Everything starts at home first.
Everything that you do starts locally that impacts everything that happens federally.
Hold on a second. The convention, you're going to have them in town. Is there any organized effort that people can get involved with now to stand out in front of the United Center and say, hey,
that's what we're that's exactly what we're talking about. That's why we're talking about organizing so that we can unionize ourselves so that we have national implications. So
absolutely.
So let me just, you know, and you can talk about these 2.9 people, but you got to look at the history of all of elections. There has never in the history of elections ever been where Republicans have gotten more than 9% of the Black vote, ever, in any election. Look at all of the exit, ever. So the idea of talking about this is what's going to happen, that's not what we need to be focused on. What we need to be focused on is organizing ourselves together so that when we open our mouths and say something, we can back it up.
That's right.
That's what we need to be doing. We don't need to just say to them something and then can't back it up. We need to organize ourselves here so that we are a national implication. We can do that right here in Chicago and Cook County. All we have to do is put ourselves in that position. And when August comes, if we have 200,000 people organized together, the president of the United States has to come and talk with us.
That's right.
They have to come and talk with us. Think about what just happened with the United Auto Workers. There's only 400,000 active members nationally. 400,000. They made him come down to a picket line. It's never happened in the history, but that's because they are organized. We have got to stop stepping on our own feet, worrying about, you know, getting some group to go over to another party. The Republican Party ain't going to do squat for black people because they don't care about black people. Black people have to do for black people. That's where we have to be. And we have got to get ourselves together so that we can make white Democrats and black Democrats respect us. We got black Democrats that don't respect us,
That's
who
right.
look like us. And that is because they can count just like we can count.
Mhm.
Only we are not organizing our count. Let's stop stepping on ourselves so that what you're doing, that we can organize ourselves, that if they don't do it, we can put people in place that will do it.
That's right.
This is not a matter of can or can't this happen, will or won't it happen. Those are the only two choices. Those are the
Now we
only
have
two
an
choices.
event coming up on February 24th, which is this Saturday at the Carrion
about that.
Center.
Mhm.
It seats 900 people, and so far today we have 568 people that have secured tickets. This event is free. We have one of the top chefs coming in to cater. We have a live band. We have DJ Phantom. We have Beyonce off of V103. And we, just a lot of morale that we're trying to bring together to say, let's organize. And so at this event, we're trying to get people registered on the website. We just need your first name, last name, your contact information, whether it's your cell phone, your email address, your zip code, so that we can begin to send out information, not just from the Conrad World Community Reparations Commission, Reparations United, First Repair, also 10 by 10. We want to get this information so that we can link this to all the organizations that have been pushing and supporting and fighting for reparations across the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, to say that we are uniting. And with this unity of people, we're going to bring a force of voters, like Mark Wallace said. And we have to make our demands because, we have been dummied down to believe that the politicians have the power. That's the biggest lie ever told. The power is in the hands of the people. We have to wake the people up and we have to let them begin to exercise their power. This whole illegal process of people coming into our country, I refuse to call them immigrants because immigrants go through a process to get into this country to receive resources. But this entire movement that has been existing currently should be enough to wake us up to say, if we don't do something now, we will become the permanent underclass, like it has been stated for years. We have to come together. We can't give either party our power. We can't lean half to the left and half to the right. We split it. And when we do that, we liquidate our power. We have got to stand in unity. And that's why we continue to fight. This event on February 24th at the Carrion Center, 5628 West Washington. It starts this Saturday from 3 to 6. We want people to come out in droves. If to do nothing, register, give us your information so we can keep you up to date as far as how we will be moving coming this summer in August with the Democrat National Convention. We're standing as Black people, not Democrat, not Republicans. We're standing as Black people that are in need for a voice, resources that we have been denied. There has been a crime committed against our culture for generation after generation, and it's time to pay the debt.
Now, how are people to get tickets? Are they to go on and RSVP, or can they show up at the door? Because it seems like you're halfway there. So how are
We're
people
halfway
to get
there.
tickets?
They have to receive the tickets on Eventbrite. I'll share the flyer and the link to my page, which is Vetress Boyce, spelled V as in Victor, ETRESS, Boyce, BOYCE. We also have the Conrad World Community Reparations Commission Facebook page, where I will also share the link, and I'll send it to you, Mark, so that you can share where people can get tickets, because it seems like the last 2 weeks they're going pretty fast.
All right. Well, that's great. That's fantastic. Well, listen, Kamm Howard, Vetress Boyce, thank you both for coming on to tell us. Give us that address one more time before we let you go.
It's the Carrion Center, 5625 West Washington Boulevard. Saturday starts at 3 p.m. to 6. We open the doors at 2:30.
All right. Fantastic.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Vetress, thank you so much. We'll look to see you on Thursday. make sure that you join us. This is very important work that you all are doing, and we can make this happen. We can be the example for the country to make it happen right here in Chicago if we do what we need to do. Thank you both so much. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you're listeners, you can go to earntheblackvote.net to join the movement for the federal redress bill.
Earntheblackvote.net.
All right, fantastic. Earntheblackvote.net. Vetress, Boyce, and Kamm Howard. Direction of Reparations and Vetress, Boyce with the Conrad Worrill Reparations Commission. They'll be having that event on Saturday. I'll be there with them to support that Saturday out there at the Carrion Center on the west side. All right, Charles. So, man, it's been a packful evening. Your Super Bowl celebration.
Oh, Kansas City. Yeah, man. That, Kansas City's my man. I love Kansas City, and it's not immune to what goes on here, what goes on all over the country. With I still don't know. I haven't been able to read about the perpetrators of this. I understand they have 2 people in custody who I assume are suspects, but they're juveniles.
Yeah.
So we're not hearing anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, I heard someone say that was a dispute over $100 that somebody owed somebody, and they started shooting. And man, like those kids, those children, if they're juveniles, I mean, should be nowhere near a firearm. But here they are. And no, should be
Missouri
nowhere.
Missouri has the weakest gun safety laws in the country. You can be 12 years old and get a gun legally in Missouri.
You cannot get a gun if you're 12 years old in Missouri. You've got to be the age of consent, which is 18 years old. Let's not take it that.
That's factually incorrect.
You cannot. You cannot buy
that is factually incorrect.
In Missouri,
that is factually
if you're 12
incorrect.
Years old. Mark,
yes, you can walk around with a firearm in Missouri.
Read the law to me. Read that law to me. And plus, that's not relevant. That's not relevant.
I think it is relevant.
The fact of the matter is that these children should not have been near a firearm. There's no way that these children, these juveniles, whether they're white, black, Latino, whatever they are, should not have been near a firearm.
I agree with you.
I agree with you. Apparently, they had these semi-automatic pistols with the switch that makes it fire very fast. But they should not have been near a firearm. Here's the question. Because they did this, because they are unsupervised children, should everybody else have to give up their pistol? I say no. They did. These kids, their parents should be held accountable. They should be held accountable, and their parents should be held accountable for what happened. The gun didn't by itself do anything. It was the kid, the irresponsible person, a child who was holding it. And what can you? I just don't see how you're going to go out and collect millions and tens of hundreds of millions of firearms because of what these kids are doing. If they're doing it here in Chicago,
reinstitute the ban, and see how it happens.
It won't affect it
before. They did it before. They did it before, and we can do it again. I mean, this apologist attitude that we have in this country and about guns. I mean, we can ban books, but we don't want to ban guns that just slaughter and kill people. We had 2 police officers and a paramedic killed in Minnesota over the weekend over some domestic issue. Mm-hmm. Or some guy had some children barricaded in a home. 2 police officers and a paramedic lost their lives this weekend. I mean, it is just beyond my understanding how people think that this is just okay. We should just have the okay corral.
That's not okay. That having somebody shoot up a post Super Bowl parade and injure 22 people and kill one woman who apparently had nothing to do with anything. That is intolerable. That cannot be allowed to happen anywhere. There should be punishment. There should be the parents should be held accountable. But if you think that this is going to cause people to give up their pistols, their self-defense,
are you kidding?
Implements. Hey, man, they're not going to do it.
Look,
they're
let me
not
tell
going
you
to do
something.
it. I'm just telling you, they're not going to do it.
If they didn't do anything when 24 babies were slaughtered in a school, you don't think that I'm under the illusion that they're interested in doing something because this incident has happened, or because 3 or 2 police officers and a paramedic, something happened, and then whatever is going to happen this coming week and in the coming days, you think that I'm under some illusion that they want to do something about it? No, I'm not. I'm not under that illusion.
Well, you don't think they should do anything about it?
We're going to continue to fight for them to do something about this gluttonous attitude about guns.
Fight on, brother. Fight on.
Yeah.
And if you get it done, holler at me, because I mean, it's going to be a tough job with 400 million weapons out there. We're going to have to find a way to control it, because again, this is how the country was born. I explained to you last week, the very place where you're sitting right now was stolen from indigenous people, and the people who stole it had a gun. This country was formed in gunfire. That's why they have a Second Amendment. And
well, I'm glad,
if you think you can get them, go for it.
Yeah, well, those of us who believe in having some sensible gun reform will continue to fight on and continue to vote for people who will put the appropriate kind of legislation in place. Thankfully, there was in California, police derailed a teen that was planning to go and kill up high school girls in California this past week. And when they went to his house, they found an arsenal of weapons in a teenager's house who was planning to go to a high school and kill up girls. Thank God that they
hadn't heard that story. That story, but was that in LA or San Francisco?
I don't know exactly where it was in California, but it was somewhere in California in one of the suburbs that happened at. So, but thank God that they were able to stop that from happening. And and the Alexander Smirnov was arrested for making false statements in Alexander Smirnov, the special counsel. He arrested and indicted him for making false statements in the so-called President Biden and Hunter Biden investigation.
He's a special counsel for whom?
The special counsel that was handling the case against Hunter Biden indicted Alexander Smirnov, who they found have made false statements in this allegations against the president and Hunter Biden.
Man, isn't this something how these prosecutors are completely out of control, particularly when you think about Fani. Is it Fani or Fannie? Fani Willis in Georgia, and the whole deal she had going with her, I guess her lead attorney in the Trump case, and the fact that she had all this cash around her house, and she admitted on the stand that she used cash from her campaign fund. I mean, this was the biggest Amos and Andy situation that I've seen in a long time.
Wait a minute. Where did you get that from? She didn't use.
What?
She didn't
She
use
said it
money
on the
from her.
camera.
No,
She
she
said
didn't.
it. She
No,
said
she
it
didn't,
on the
Charles.
stand,
No,
Mark.
she
I
didn't.
heard her with my ear.
No, well,
My hearing is
no,
gone.
no,
But believe me, I heard
you
that.
didn't hear that.
She said
That was
that
not her
she
testimony. That
said
was not her
she had
testimony.
money
I
in her
listened to the
campaign.
testimony.
Look.
That's not what she said,
The
Charles.
problem is the
That's not
cash.
what she said.
He's
The
running
problem is not
around.
the cash.
It
The
is the
problem is
cash.
not the
The
cash.
cash, man.
The,
Hey, you know what time is it, man? It's
the problem is
8:54. We
not the
got 5
cash.
minutes left.
We
We need
got
to
let's
talk
get
about.
done.
We need to talk about this next week because she did. I can
Well,
clip it
that's
for
not what
you.
she said.
That's what she said on
That's
the
not what she said.
stand. That she
That's
said it could have been
factually
for my
incorrect,
campaign.
Charles.
Really?
She did not
But
say that.
anyway, but whatever, Mark. You have your version of what she said.
No, I have
mine.
the
But
truth.
the bottom, I have the truth
and the
too.
facts of it.
I
You
would
did not
rather
hear
have
that.
the truth.
You
Mark,
did not hear
it's
that.
8:55, man. We got to go, but we can talk. We can continue this conversation next week, okay?
Yes.
Because I had not heard the Smirnoff story. You can brief me on that, and I can get the clip.
I'm
and
surprised.
play it for you. Why should I be chasing that around?
Well, I mean, wait a minute. Why should you
Really?
be? Because you're always
Right.
talk about
No,
Hunter
there's been
Biden
no.
and his
Hey, look,
laptop and
there's been. I'm not
the
always.
impropriety.
Have I
So
mentioned
all
that
of a
today?
sudden,
Have I mentioned that today, Mark? Mark, have
you
I
certainly
mentioned that
mentioned it
today?
enough.
You
You
said I
certainly mentioned it
always.
enough.
You
But
see, you misspeak. You
now,
misspeak. You said I always. I
it's
don't
not something
always
that
talk
you want
about
to hear
that.
about because
Nah,
it's
man,
happened
I
to
don't want to hear about
something
that. I think
on your
Fonnie.
side.
I think Fonnie's testimony was far more interesting than what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was because
Okay.
she set them on their heels. It certainly was.
Oh
She
man.
certainly set them on their heels. Them chasing this wild ghost because they don't want
Whatever,
to be held
man.
accountable for their crimes.
Some straight up Amos and Andy stuff.
Yeah,
I
it was.
mean, what are you all talking about?
Those attorneys
was-
for the
It
defense
was
were complete
embarrassing.
clowns. They
It
were
was
complete clowns.
embarrassing, man.
No,
Embarrassing.
for the defense counsel, it was.
It was
For
embarrassing
the
for her,
defense
man.
counsel, it was. No,
You
it wasn't.
understand, man? Come
Not
on,
at all.
man.
Not at all.
It was
She put them on their heels
Mark,
when
it's
they thought
8:50.
that they had something when they didn't.
I got 8:59, man. We got to be out of here.
No, it's 8:56.
We've had well, no, but I got to go. But it's got it's been a great show. I really enjoyed Justice Cobb's, and I think to be brought up to date on the reparations movement was extraordinarily helpful for me because I see a sham, a scam. I see the Democrat Party running game on Black people, knowing they're not going to do a thing, but they know if they say it and they make it a campaign issue, they'll get their opponent to say no, and they'll say, of course, we're studying reparations, which is why I've given up on the Democrat Party. And I think I'm hearing Kamm and I'm hearing Vetress say the same thing. They're this close. That's why I want to see them hold these people responsible, particularly when they come to Chicago this summer. Hold them to it. Call them out. Make it part of the Democrat Party platform. Let's see if they do that. Let's see
if we organize ourselves together like we should and like we're working towards, we can do that. But we've got to organize ourselves and put ourselves in the posture so that they can know that we are not functioning the way that we have functioned before, especially here locally, to send them a message here locally that we are not just going to be in their corner because they share the same skin tone that we share. We'll put another person who shares the same skin tone there that we want to have there, but we got to be in that position to be able to demonstrate that kind of power. Then you will get the kind of response that we need. All right, well, listen, that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Coming up in the next week, we are trying to get some guests. Hopefully, I think we're halfway there. We're going to have the both the Democratic candidates for the state's attorney in studio with us. So we have one half of them in, and then we hopefully will have both of them. And so that's Clayton Harris and Judge Eileen O'Neill Burke, who is a retired judge. Both are running for the Democratic side of the in this primary. And of course, Bob Fioretti is running as a Republican for the Republican. I don't think he has an opponent, so he should easily prevail there. But so we'll see. We're going to try to have them in studio with us next week. So we certainly want to thank all of you for tuning in for this week's edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas.
See you next week.
See you all next week. Good night.